She was the villain. She was the third person in the marriage.
Queen Elizabeth initially did not like Camilla Parker Bowles. Despite the very obvious affection that Camilla had for Charles and vice versa,
the Queen is making more history, saying that Camilla should be styled as Queen when her son Charles becomes king.
There is insight into the scandal and tragedy that almost brought the monarchy to its knees. What the Queen feels about Camilla, the woman she once described as wicked.
Smiles, they light up her whole face. I'll always remember that smile. That smile is unforgettable.
Queen Elizabeth wrote that it is her sincere wish for Camilla the Duchess of Cornwall to be known as Queen Consort, which means she would be referred to as Queen Camilla when the time comes.
a lot of the tension between Camilla Parker Bowles and Queen Elizabeth begs the question, why didn't Prince Charles just marry Camilla in the first place?
There has been much speculation over the years about whether the British public would accept Camilla as queen, considering her rocky history with the royals.
Let me go back over something here. The Queen has famously said she would never abdicate the throne. You beg to differ.
I think Charles is very keen on her to become queen. She's played the role that he really wants in a consort, not outshining him, not overshadowing him, there by his side, there with him.
Senior aides are reportedly working on plans for Camilla to take over some of Her Majesty's duties. What's the latest on that front?
The Queen said, quote, "It is my sincere wish that when the time comes, Camilla will be known as Queen Consort as she continues her own loyal service.
I know she will bring to the demands of her new role the steadfast devotion to duty on which I have come to rely so much."
She waited, for years, quietly, privately. While the world watched and whispered, Camilla Parker Bowles sat at the edge of the royal circle, never quite inside it, and the woman holding the door shut was not the public. It was not the press. It was the Queen herself. Royal biographer Christopher Andersen has spent years documenting what goes on behind palace walls. And what he found about Queen Elizabeth's private feelings toward Camilla is far more calculated than anyone has been willing to say out loud. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe to Royal Archives. The word Andersen uses is detested. Not tolerated, not disapproved of, detested. That is the word that reportedly described how Queen Elizabeth felt about the woman her son had loved for decades. And yet, in February 2022, with the world watching, the Queen stood before the nation and gave Camilla her public blessing.
She said that when her son Charles becomes king, his wife Camilla will be known as Queen.
She called it her sincere wish. So what changed? What exactly did it take for a woman the Queen privately called that wicked woman to finally receive the royal seal of approval? That's where the story stops making sense, unless you understand just how long this had been building. Charles and Camilla first met in 1970. They fell for each other fast, but the palace had other plans for the heir to the throne, and Camilla Shand, not yet Parker Bowles, was not considered suitable. Charles went overseas with the Royal Navy. The relationship quietly collapsed. By 1973, Camilla had married someone else, but Charles never fully moved on. That much history has made clear. In 1981, Charles married Lady Diana Spencer in what the world called a fairy tale. Behind that fairy tale was a man still emotionally attached to another woman. During Ascot Week that year, Charles reportedly turned to a dinner companion and asked, "Do you think you can fall in love after you're married?" The question was not rhetorical. Diana knew. The public eventually found out. And the Queen, who always prided herself on the stability of the institution, watched the whole thing unravel in slow motion. By 1994, Charles admitted publicly to the affair.
Did you try to be faithful and honourable to your wife?
Yes, absolutely. Until it became irretrievably broken down.
By 1996, the marriage to Diana was over. And in 1997, Diana was gone. What followed was one of the most carefully managed image operations in modern royal history. Operation PB, Parker Bowles, was reportedly the internal palace effort to rehabilitate Camilla's public standing. The goal was straightforward: make Britain accept her. But there was one person no campaign could simply convince: the Queen. While Charles lobbied quietly, And according to Andersen, persistently, the Queen held firm. She did not invite Camilla to Charles's 50th birthday party in 1998. She did not acknowledge the relationship publicly for years. And when Camilla threw her own party for Charles that same night, the Queen was notably absent from that too. This was not accidental. Nothing the Queen did was accidental. Here is what makes this more than just a cold mother-in-law story. The Queen's resistance was not purely personal. According to multiple royal sources, she understood something that Charles, blinded by love, refused to accept for years. The British public had adored Diana. They blamed Camilla. And placing Camilla beside Charles on the throne would, in the Queen's own private calculation, be deeply problematic for the monarchy's survival. She was protecting the institution, or at least, that is the official version. But here's what's raising eyebrows among royal observers. The Queen had reportedly warmed toward Camilla personally by the early 2000s. By some accounts, she had quietly come to accept the relationship in private. And yet, publicly, the distance remained. The endorsement did not come. Charles lobbied for 17 years. 17. And still the Queen withheld the one thing that could have changed everything. Her public blessing. That's not caution. That's control. And the ways she exercised that control were not always obvious. They were subtle. Architectural, almost. An uninvited guest here. A missing name from a seating plan there. A reception where Camilla stood just outside the official photographs. None of it loud enough to cause a scene. All of it deliberate enough to send a message. People close to the palace have described the Queen's method as a kind of managed distance. She never slammed a door in Camilla's face. She simply never fully opened one. And in the world of the British monarchy, where every gesture carries meaning and every absence is noted, that distinction matters enormously. Charles understood it. Camilla understood it better. And for years, neither of them could do anything about it. Something about this doesn't add up. Because on the surface, the Queen was a woman known for pragmatism. She had navigated divorces, scandals, public crises that would have brought lesser institutions to their knees. She was not sentimental in the way the public often imagined her to be. So why, when she had privately accepted Camilla, did the public endorsement take so long? Andersen points to something deeper. The Queen, he suggests, was acutely aware of what Camilla represented in the public imagination. Not just a second wife, but the woman who had been there during the marriage to Diana, the woman Diana herself had named, and in the years immediately following Diana's death, when public grief was raw and the monarchy's own standing had taken a serious blow, any move toward openly embracing Camilla carried real risk. The Queen had watched her own approval ratings survive things that should have broken them. She was not about to gamble that resilience on a gesture she wasn't ready to make. So she waited. And she made Charles wait. And she made Camilla wait. Then something shifted. And the timing, as always with the palace, was precise. In February 2022, on the 75th anniversary of her reign, Queen Elizabeth made a statement that stunned the royal world. She said it was her sincere wish that Camilla would be known as Queen Consort when Charles took the throne. Overnight, polling shifted. Half the British public, who had resisted Camilla for decades, said they were now willing to accept her as queen. One sentence from the Queen, 17 years in the making, and it worked almost immediately. That is the power she had been holding, and that is how deliberately she chose to use it. Across royal commentary circles, one question kept surfacing. Why then? Why 2022 specifically? What finally moved the needle for a woman who had made Charles wait nearly 2 decades for something this simple? Andersen's account points to a convergence of pressures: institutional, familial, and personal. The Queen had been on the throne for 70 years. Charles was in his 70s. The window for managing this transition on her terms was closing fast, and so she acted, on her timeline, by her rules, the way she had done everything. What this tells us about Queen Elizabeth is something the official record has always danced around. She was not simply a figurehead. She was not a passive symbol. She was a strategist, a woman who understood that withholding approval is its own form of power, sometimes more effective than any direct intervention. She never publicly attacked Camilla. She never made a speech against her. She simply waited. And made others wait, too. The Queen Mother had reportedly detested Camilla far more openly, viewing her as a destabilizing force in a family that had spent generations protecting its image. The Queen absorbed that view, softened it over time, but never fully released it until she was ready. Think about what it actually means to wait 17 years for your partner's mother to say your name out loud in a positive context. 17 years of state occasions you were not included in, of portraits you were absent from, of moments where Charles stood in the frame and you stood elsewhere. And all of it managed not by law, not by any formal decree, but by one woman's decision about when she was ready. That is the story Christopher Andersen is really telling, not just about Camilla, about the Queen, about the quiet, extraordinary authority she exercised over the people closest to her, including her own son, right up until the final chapter of her reign. When the endorsement finally came, even insiders were reportedly taken aback, not because it was unexpected. Everyone knew it had to happen eventually, but because of how completely the Queen had controlled the narrative, right up to the moment she chose to release it. Camilla is now Queen, crowned, officially, seated beside Charles at the coronation in May 2023, a ceremony the Queen never lived to see. She died in September 2022, 7 months after giving her blessing, 7 months after finally, publicly, letting go. Whether that timing changes how you read the story. That is something royal watchers are still turning over. Some say the Queen ended her reign gracefully, accepting what she could not ultimately stop. Others suggest the blessing itself was the final act of a woman who wanted to control the ending on her own terms. Both things can be true. And with Queen Elizabeth, they usually were. There is one more detail worth sitting with. After Charles and Camilla married in April 2005, after the Queen had attended the blessing, after she had hosted the reception at Windsor Castle, after she had delivered a speech that drew laughter from the room, the Queen quietly made a private adjustment to the royal order of precedence. For official occasions, she placed Camilla fourth, behind herself, behind Princess Anne, behind Princess Alexandra. It was a small move, barely noticed publicly, but it was a reminder, if anyone needed one, that acceptance and equality were not the same thing. The door had opened, but the Queen was still the one deciding how wide. What is not in question is this. Camilla waited. The Queen made her wait. And when the waiting finally ended, it ended exactly the way the Queen decided it would. The full picture of what Queen Elizabeth managed, and how, is still coming into focus. New biographies are pulling back the curtain on decisions that were made quietly, deliberately, and always on her terms. Royal Archives will keep following where the story leads. Subscribe if you want to be there when the next layer surfaces. Because with this family, there is always another layer.